listening to Over the Oxer podcast with Tracy Cole for all things to do with the mind for equestrians. So this week I am absolutely delighted to welcome Kristi Seymour. Kristi is a licensed clinical therapist and has been for over 20 years. She's a published author, an equestrian performance coach, and founder of EquiMind, which is a real-time performance psychology app for riders, and it's the very first one in the world. With over 20 years of clinical experience and a lifetime in the saddle, she's admitting to 5 decades, she specializes in helping riders regulate their nervous system under pressure so that they can perform consistently and ride effectively in the moments that matter most. I think this is going to be a good one. So very warm welcome, Kristi. How are you?
Good morning. I am fine. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you're saying good morning. Perhaps I should tell the listeners that you must have gotten up with the absolute dawn or before dawn this morning, because it's 5 a.m. your time, isn't it, right now?
It is, but it's my pleasure.
So Kristi's over in Alaska, so I'm sure we'll get on to talking about riding in Alaska and all of those challenges that might come with that kind of location. But Kristi, start by telling us a little bit about your horsey journey. When did you get into horses?
Well, I was always enamored with horses. I love them. Fortunately, I had a mother who, around the time I was 7 or 8, really wanted me to find something that I could excel in. So we did piano, we did ballet, we did swimming lessons. She took me to Pony Club to ride a horse one day. And that was it. I just, I had always wanted to ride, and I just bonded with the horses then and continued from then on. We did not come from money, so Pony Club was a wonderful opportunity to have access to horses, and then just taking lessons, and kind of in the United States we call it being a barn rat, hanging out at your local barn and just doing whatever chores I could to get a ride. And then I just continued through, when I was in school. And I rode all different kinds of horses. I rode Appaloosas, I rode quarter horses, I rode thoroughbreds. And then later on, as I got really serious, I started riding warm bloods, and I've just always continued. So throughout my career, sometimes I could lease a horse. And then a little bit later on in life, I could purchase a horse. And so it was just lovely. It was lovely. So here I am. Oh my goodness. 52 years later, still riding and going to the barn a couple times a week. Love it.
Fantastic. Have you got your own horse at the moment?
I do. His name is Prince, and he's a Zangerscheid, and I've had him, oh my gosh, since he was 6, and he just turned 18 this year, and we're still competing in dressage. We're working towards 4th level this year, so we shall see.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Now, I mentioned Alaska. I've got to ask you, tell us what it's like riding. I mean, you've got quite a lot of weather challenges, and you've probably got a lot of darkness challenges in the winter. Tell us, what's it like being a rider there?
Well, it can be stunningly beautiful when the weather is lovely and we have beautiful trails. Fortunately, I'm at a barn where we have a gorgeous indoor and it's heated. And so it stays about 40 degrees year round. And so we are just incredibly fortunate for that. The horse people in Alaska usually have to fly their horses up from the lower 48, that we call it, because there's certainly not a lot of breeding or things that happen. But we have a very strong community up here. We have hunter jumpers. We have dressage. We have 4 rated shows a year. And then there's a strong quarter horse community as well. And then there's a lot of people who have horses just at their house, and they take them hunting and do things like that. So it's pretty diverse. I was surprised at the number of horse people up here.
Yeah, I don't necessarily associate the place with horses. I associate it with
No.
whales and grizzly bears and things. So, is there any kind of special mindset or, mental gear that you need to have when you're a rider in that kind of climate, do you think?
Well, I think especially the challenges in October, November, December, January, when it's dark. It literally, we only have a few hours of daylight, and it's not even a full daylight. It's like a very soft dawn. So it does take a little bit of doing to get out of your perfect bed temperature and roll out and throw on your clothes and drive to the barn. But for me, my as a clinical therapist and a coach, my happy place is at the barn, and so for me, that is my balance in my life, so I welcome it, but and I also have friends there, and so it can be daunting sometimes in the morning to go, but it's worth it. So,
Yeah.
it's a joy and it's a priority, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They maybe actually being a rider's an advantage because if you're non-equestrian, you don't have that reason to spring out of bed when it's dark and
Right.
cold.
But you need to do something, whether even if horses aren't your thing, you need to go and be active in the winter. I go to the gym in addition to the barn. That's not my only source. I like to go snowshoeing. It just really depends. So it's just important for your mental health and your well being to move and be active and just to get out. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been a rider, like you mentioned, for over 50 years, and you've been a therapist for decades. What was that specific moment, either as a rider or as a clinician, that you realized that traditional therapy wasn't quite working for riders?
It was with myself. I was really struggling with some regulation, and I did not understand why my body in certain times I was great in one areas and then the consistency wasn't there when I was either at a clinic or I was at a horse show under pressure. And I said, "What is going on, Christy?" And so I started really thinking about this, and I was searching for tools for myself, and when I couldn't find it, then I said, "Well, let's create something."
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. So I want to ask you a little bit about your approach because it's quite different and quite specialized. And I think people will be really, really fascinated by what you do. So, one of the most frustrating things for riders, I think, the competitors really, is that they can do things at home. They can do a beautiful dressage test at home, or they can do a perfect
Mm.
show jumping round, or whatever it might be, but then they lose it at the show. So why do they lose that performance under pressure, even if they're highly skilled?
Oh, it's just so interesting because your body goes into its sympathetic state. So your amygdala will fire, and within milliseconds, your automatic nervous system just rolls over into your sympathetic nervous system. Not to get too clinical, but there's a physiological change that happens in all of us. And so it means that your heart rate increases, your breathing shortens, your muscles contract, your attention narrows. And so you actually lose that front part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain, which impacts your timing and your decision. So your ability to execute deteriorates when you shift into that state. And so I had to determine, I was like, well, why is this happening? And then, what can I do in the moment to reset?
Yeah,
And so that's why I started looking into these tools that we can use in real time as equestrians to get past that gap. Okay. Because when you are in the moment, you don't have time to sit and think about certain things. You're just doing and you're feeling with your horse, right?
yeah,
So that's the difference I think, in the coaching because you don't have access to all those complex cognitive strategies, in your thoughts, and you can't
mm,
really talk yourself through it. So your system will default to that physiological state
yeah.
and you go into this different system. So you're like, "Oh, no, dang, what do I do?"
Yeah, I love that your work is very much about in the moment that these things happen. And I'm going to ask you lots more questions about that because I find that really fascinating and so powerful as well. So, how does then thinking about a rider's nervous system, how does that directly affect the horse? Are we are we leaking stress out of our body and into theirs?
Yes, so when we get tight, our horse braces, okay? When you hesitate, your horse loses clarity. When you regulate, your horse softens. And so it's kind of like a closed feedback loop when this happens. And so your micro changes in your breath and in your body, your hips, your thighs, your calves, it all transmits to your horse in split seconds, and then they're like, "Hey, hey," even before your mind has a chance to catch up.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? These things are happening so quickly, and I think that's why
Mhm.
it's quite difficult for riders because sometimes you haven't even caught up with how you feel and the fact that you've got
Correct.
nervous. Oh, when did that happen? So
Exactly,
it,
exactly.
this really resonates with me, and I think it will resonate with a lot of listeners as well. So when we, for instance, when we get something wrong in our riding, whatever it might be. And obviously, getting something wrong is going to be different for different people and the level of wrongness. Some people they just bat it away, and other people it's going to be the worst thing ever. But when they make a mistake, what actually happens in our bodies as we make that mistake?
So people tend to replay the error. And then they start to anticipate another mistake. And then they're maybe riding a few strides back, trying to fix something that had already happened. So I feel that this leads to compounding errors. And so then your nervous system gets really defensive. So I feel that riders don't lose their performance because they don't know what to do. They lose it because their body shifts faster than their mind can correct it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I know exactly what you mean because I think we've all experienced it where you are on this catch up. So traditional mindset coaching in that case, it's split second, so it won't work in that moment unless you can bring your horse back to a halt and you can do your mindset stuff. So so
Right. Because
well,
because before you ride, you're doing visualizations, you're setting your goals, you're doing your
yeah,
breathing, all the correct things. I'm not saying those are incorrect, but and after the ride, you can review it, you can think about it, you can journal it, but and they're very useful, but the exact moment that your performance breaks, you don't have time to think. And so you have to have a couple of different strategies and tools to try to use on your horse in that moment if you can. Remember them
yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah.
practice them.
Yeah, well, the practice is so that I presume it becomes automatic. You've got your go-to. Because if we're thinking of, well, any kind of competition, you haven't got time to just say to the judge, "Well, hang on a sec.
Exactly.
I just
It
need a moment here. Just give me
Yeah,
20
exactly.
seconds." I mean,
Exactly.
you just can't do that. So, can you just tell us uh, something that we could start to think about for those stickier moments, what we could actually be doing?
The first thing, it's actually quite simple. The first thing you want to do is your breath, okay? You want to always breathe out longer than you inhale. So if you inhale for 4 seconds, you want to exhale for 6, okay? And that is the brakes on your nervous system. When we get activated, it's like the gas pedal. And then when we breathe, it's like the brakes, okay? The second thing is you want to notice your body. You want to come back to your body, okay? And you want to feel one point of contact in your body. So your seat or your legs or just maybe adjusting the tension in your wrists, all right? So your breath, your body, and then the third thing is your senses. So whatever you're focusing on. I have created over 200 different tools that will help you look at the skyline or look at something else so you don't get stuck and locked in, okay? When you break that sensory focus, that will help you focus on just one task after that. So I always say, ride the next stride. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so just trying to interrupt that feedback loop, that process with those 3 steps, I have found has helped people regulate efficiently and quickly back into their ride and get their feel and that connection with their horse.
Great, great. So do you find that people do all three, that it works best if they do all three, or that they do a favorite? If they're very kinesthetic, they do feel yourself in the saddle or feel the reins, or if you're visual, you're looking at the skyline, like you said, or is it better to do a combination?
That's an excellent question, and it really varies depending on the rider and what their go-to, what are the words I'm trying to find, are. Like you said,
Yeah,
they might have a particular preference. And again, it depends on the venue and things like that. But just knowing that they in that moment should try one or two or three of these things, and whatever will come to their mind is the most useful thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And would you say, particularly with things like the breathing, but also the other things that you mentioned, is it good to get in practice when you're already calm and that there's nothing going wrong and you're just at home and you're just schooling? Is it better
Yes.
to just get those into your head and do those three naturally?
Yes, I always say that you need to practice this just like you practice anything else. No, we don't want to create a crisis or a spook or anything like that, or upset ourselves deliberately. But knowing that you can recognize that moment when it goes offline and then, oh, yeah, I could do this or this. It's a performance tool. And so I'm just trying to highlight this little area that will help all the pieces come together so that you can be successful. And you don't have to be at a competition. You could be out on a trail with your friends and have the same kind of struggles. And so just being able to say, okay, I'm going to feel safe here within my body and with my horse, and let's continue to have a good afternoon with, my friends.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I suppose then in that moment, or very, very shortly after whatever's happened, that resets you then without compounding the problem.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Which again is really important so that you aren't escalating in your mind or in reality what's going on with you or what's going on with your horse, which is just so, so valuable, isn't it?
It is, and you have to really be crisper with your thoughts. You really have to learn to not analyze your mistake in the moment, you know?
Mm,
I personally I put force into it. I'm like, "I'll try harder, blah. I'll
yeah,
work through it, I'll ride through it, I'll add more connection, I'll do this, I'll do that," instead of just so learning how to reset my body and just keep my mind right here, and not
yeah,
going off in the different areas. So
yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean that in that moment that you make a mistake, that you're necessarily negative. Let me give you an example of a friend of mine rode to a really high level. So she rode internationally and she was an eventer. And she said that when she did the dressage phase, she, she was going round scoring herself in her head. So, so not negative. She was just going, I score myself such and such for that, and then she was trying to add it up as well. So there was all this extraneous stuff that she didn't need
yes.
to
Wow.
have. But if she'd have done the breathing, the visual, and bringing yourself back into your body, she probably would have done even better, even though she did
Yes.
enormously well. Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you do this in times of high stress. You can do it to block out anything that's stopping you from performing or enjoying it.
Yes. It's a mindfulness. It's coming back to the
Yeah,
present moment and just being in the present moment. And us overachievers, yeah, you it's a balance, right? Because you
yeah,
can't just say, I'm just going to ride this next stride, because if you're going into the corner, you have to think about that next movement. Or if you're on course, you have to think about, oh, I've got this combination coming up. And so it is a balance. And again, it is a mental process, and being able to shift into those different ways that you need to be in real time with your horse, depending on how they're showing up.
yeah.
It's not multitasking at all.
No, no, just as you were saying that, I was thinking, Wow, we do a lot, don't we?
Yes,
You're
we
thinking
do.
about now, you're thinking about 2 seconds time, you're thinking about that, you're thinking about this semi-wild beast that you've decided to ride. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, we are good at multitasking. Tell us then a little bit about the app that you've created, so the EquiMind app, because
Thank you.
that kind of bridges the gap, doesn't it, between people having maybe a mindset session or, like you said before, doing their own personal review of what went well, what didn't go so well, what to work on. But this is more in the moment kind of stuff like we've been speaking about, isn't it?
Again, I was looking for some tools for myself because
Yeah.
I'm a work in progress. I do not profess to know everything. And, depending on your partner, your horse, and all those different dynamics, I said, okay, this is an issue for me. So I started learning code. I had an idea. I had some things that I wanted to pull together for myself. And I said, how can I put this into something that people can use outside of myself. And of course, our technology is different now. And I was like, well, could we do something on the phone? And so I thought about, all right, let's do an app. So I started teaching myself how to write code, not that part of my brain at all.
Wow.
And so, yes, I found a platform to create it. And what has come of it is a lot of writer tools. Specifically, I have a section on mindfulness and flow. I have a section on breathing. I have a section on emotional regulation. I use tapping that you can use on your horse. I'm not saying let the reins go and start tapping all over. And then there's a section on distress tolerance. So when you have those high stress moments, or unfortunately, if you have a crisis or a fall or a fear state really comes up strong, what could you do? In the app, I have voice activated ability. So depending on you put in your profile and you enter in your information on your anxiety and your confidence and your energy level. And then you enter in your horse's profile and you can have, I think I put in up to 5 horses. So people ride different horses. And so then, based on what information you put in for that moment before your ride, within 60 seconds, you can get some tools that you can use to adjust your mindset or set your mind, if you will, before you get on. There is a function if you wanted to stop your horse during a ride and reset under 60 seconds, you can choose that as well. And then after your ride, depending on you go in and you enter in, and it's just a simple scale 1 to 7, how you're feeling afterwards. It will track your rides and your trends and tell you, hey, this went well on that day. And so you might be able to say, riding, doing these kind of movements or during this day. I mean, whatever's going on in your life, you can be able to reflect and see any patterns for yourself. Also in the app, I have a section called Inside Track, and I put a couple of courses and some downloads and information for people as well. So I just kind of tried to make it as robust as possible to give riders tools. I love the sport so much. I'm very passionate about it, and I just want people to have a good time with their horse and bring that part of joy to their life.
Oh, fabulous. That just kind of made me think so many questions to ask you about the app, to be honest. Um, First of all, you mentioned tapping. I think most people have heard of tapping. Could you just tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about it and how it works and how it works for riders?
So, tapping is a really simple hands on technique that can help you quickly release anxiety, fear, and any of those performance blocks. So, the writers that I worked with using it's been transformative. And so it just interrupts the stress cycle and just helps you process whatever emotion comes up. So you don't have to have any formal training. Within the app, I put a picture of a person. And let me tell you, that was hard to do, to try to find just the right kind of person to put in there. And there's a little bit of a guide in there on how to use the tapping in the different places in your body. And so, yeah, it's pretty simple and self-explanatory with pictures and then things that you can do based on the criteria you put into the app.
Oh, lovely. So you can do that. Like you said, you don't want to throw your reins away necessarily, but if your
Right.
horse
Yeah.
was calm and you thought it was appropriate, you could do a little bit of tapping on yourself
Right.
as you ride, or maybe
Absolutely.
in halts or something like that.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
And I love that you said you can put 5 horses in because, of
Yeah.
course, lots of people, I'm sure you find this, I find this all the time. People don't necessarily ride the horse that they're on. They ride the horse who causes them the problems or caused them problems 10 years ago. So it's so nice then that you can track yourself on these different horses with different personalities and your responses as well. I think that's so useful. But
Nice.
five
Thank you.
horses, especially, I mean, that lends itself to professional riders as well, then with 5 horses, doesn't it? Not just a
Yes.
recreational rider.
And I'm just working on an article for in the United States, something called Stable Management. They have an online presence, and I talk about how a trainer's mindset and how they are is a performance issue. So if your horse is not going well, yes, you've got barn stress, you've got customers, you've got clients, and all sorts of other different dynamics. But sometimes people they look at the health of the horse or what's going on. This horse didn't perform, but trainers are not always so quick to reflect on themselves and see how they're showing up. They might get on their horse because they finished this ride, they've got 3 more to do, and then they've got this, they've got that. And so just helping r- trainers take a step back and see that this could be a performance issue within their partnership with their horse as well.
Okay. And so how do you sign up for this app?
Oh, well, thank you.
How do you get it?
It is in Apple. It is available worldwide, and it also just yesterday went into Google Play. And
Whee!
let me tell you, as a founder, it has been incredibly tedious and challenging. It is not user friendly, Apple and Google. To put an app on there, I had to hire some engineers out of India to work and help me get it across the finish line. Eh, Let me tell you that this app is something they call a full stack app. So that means it has a front end, it has a database that I created that goes with it that holds all this information, and then the back end. So it has been really interesting learning about technology and how to apply it to our horses and things like that. And so, yeah, it's a labor of love, but guys, it works. I encourage you to just check it out, and I would love the feedback.
Fabulous, fabulous. And you have kindly offered a limited number of free users so that they can just experience the app, haven't you?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I would be more than happy for people to message you or me. We'll figure that out and give them those codes, and yeah.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. I think that's maybe what you need because you can't have a mindset coach with you 24/7, and
Exactly.
so it is the very next best thing to have this thing with you, especially as you get used to navigating around the app and you get your favorite things and your go-to things.
Yes.
It's as good as instant, isn't it, really?
Yes, thank you. Yes, and certainly being in Alaska, I have colleagues and professionals, but again, when you're yourself going through something in real time, it can be hard to reach out to someone and be like, "So, hey, by the way, Tracy, this happened earlier," because you need it in the moment. And so,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
you have
Fabulous.
something in your pocket.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I just love that idea that people can help themselves. Not that I'm
Yeah.
saying people shouldn't go to mindset coaches, otherwise I'll have
Right.
no career, but it's just nice that they've got this extra backup as well. That's so nice. Okay. So I'm thinking about a rider now who is sitting in their trailer or they're sitting at the yard or the barn or the farm and they're going to go and ride. They're not feeling so great. What what one physiological or mental truth would you like to tell them?
That's a great
That's a
that's a great
great question.
question.
It's a curveball one that you'll have to think
It
about.
is, it is, it is. So they are getting ready to ride and they are
Not
just not
feeling,
in the best place?
yeah, just not feeling maybe a little bit anxious. Not so anxious that they're not going to ride, but just a bit
Mm,
apprehensive, and just something that would just help them, just, a little key to. I'm not saying it's going to suddenly make them the calmest rider in the world or the most confident rider, but just a little takeaway that they could think about.
humming, hum. Just get a little bit of a tune and just start humming. I can't sing for anything, but if you hum, your horse, it's gonna regulate your breathing. If you put a tune in your head and you start to hum, and then you're gonna feel that within your body, and then your horse, if you're standing next to your horse, their ears are gonna start to move. They're gonna kinda look at you
Yeah.
like, "Okay."
Yeah. Definitely my horses, if I'm humming,
Yeah.
they'll be definitely looking at me going, I think you need to stop that racket.
Exactly, exactly. But, horses can sense our heartbeats, a few feet away. And so the fact that they would tune into that, it could help pivot you out of that thinking state of because you're in anticipatory anxiety, you're thinking about all the different things
Mm.
and just be in the moment. And we're having a laugh about it. And it could just help maybe break and pivot, like I said, that out of that way. So you get on your horse and you might want to hum it a little bit as you're heading to the warm-up ring or something like that, and so your horse is gonna feel that, and
Yeah.
yeah. See, you're smiling too, so that was just my off the top of my head little takeaway.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Sorry, that was a bit of a surprise one, wasn't it?
No, it's okay.
I like that. I like that, and it does remind me of quite an amusing story that I knew a professional rider who used to hack out horses for other people, but she'd hack out on some really mad horses, really, really full of themselves, and you could always tell when it was a horse that was a little bit more energetic and on their toes, because you would hear her humming, and you could hear it over the hedgerows, and she'd be
Oh.
humming, "I'm leaving on a jet plane." Always that song. So if you
That's
could
awesome.
hear "I'm leaving on a jet plane" around the lanes, you knew she was on something that had a bit of a spring in its step.
That's awesome. Yes, I've been on a couple of horses and I'm like, "Okay, I have to make sure that my tray table and my seat is in its upright and locked position and my seatbelt's on." Yes.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Oh, that has been so much fun to chat to you about what you do and your fabulous app. Can you tell us, where can we find you on the internet and on social media? I'm going to put everything in the description box, but just so that anyone who doesn't have a description box in their podcast, they can just find you easily.
Well, it's equimind.net and then the equestrianmind.com. And so there's links on all of those. But I'm also on Insta and Facebook. So yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. It's a pleasure to meet you and just network. And I love the sport, like I said, and anything I can do to help riders enjoy and be better. I just think it benefits all of us and the animals. So
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, well, it has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much. And I know now that because it's still very early in the morning for you, you're going to go off to the barn and see to your
yes.
horse. So we better let you go and do that before the working day starts. But take care. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Thank you.